This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
All right, good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, January 10th, and this is a workshop meeting of the North Haven Board of Finance. This is the first of our series of budget meetings that take place every early winter and into the spring. This morning, we're going to hear from Library, Community Service and Recreation, and then lastly, the Fire Department will join us a little bit later. Members have received their budgets. We got them over the past week, and unless there's any preliminary comments or questions, I would just ask Sue to commence, but let me just ask that first.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Sue. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this budget season. Before we get started, I just want to thank some of the library board members that have come in support. We have Ruth Bryant, Michael Fletcher is our board chair, Marianne Hardy, and sorry, I was going down the road, but yes, friends, thank you.
Thank you all for your service. Appreciate it.
Okay, the first thing I want to say before I get started is just that I do recognize that this is going to be a tough budget year after our increase last year. So when I prepped this budget, I did as much as I could to keep our requests low this year. But to begin, I would like to just start and show, I want to highlight the library improvements and just remind everybody that all of these improvements are being made with 50% grant from the State Library of Connecticut. So let me start off. Okay. So the first was the desk. This is our children's department. We put new flooring throughout, which was very, very much needed. It has brightened the space quite a bit. We're getting tons of compliments. We also put hard surface flooring around the desk, both in the children's and you'll see in the adult department. And we've done that because that's where the most traffic is, so we'll get longer use out of our carpet. So that's the children's. We also painted all the bricks, and staff did that at no cost other than the paint, around, not the bricks, the books that go along the desk, and they're our library logo colors. Okay, so in the Rotary section, this is our old teen department area, and this is where we moved our newspapers and magazines. And this is twofold. One is it's a quieter area, and that was being asked for by a lot of the folks who read the newspapers. So we made it a nice cozy area where people can concentrate. And when the teens were here, they outgrew the space. So it was a nice switch of space, and it looks really refreshed and new with the new flooring, but this is all existing furniture. Here we've moved, we have our new cafe and our new computer area. So this is being, used as soon as we put it in, as soon as we opened the space, people started using our cafe. On the right, you'll see like there's a little kitchen type area where we have little snacks for sale, and we have a TV up that shows all of our upcoming program, and we also have on that screen community service and other town departments important information. So that's there for everybody. Our computers are there. We now have 12. They're directly across from our new service desk, which is so much more helpful because people were somewhat hidden before, and if they needed help, they couldn't see staff. This is just the desk, like looking down on it. We have our new books. Those have been moved. So up against the stairs, we have our nonfiction. On the wall, we have our fiction, and then we have two displays. Upstairs on the second floor, the top floor, are our new quiet study rooms and meeting rooms. And they're being used throughout the day. And these are great because they're technically not permanent, but they're permanent. So they were able to go in and utilize empty wall space. So this is fantastic.
So quick question on
Sure.
the renovation of the second floor, so not the first floor, but the second floor with these new quiet spaces. I also noticed in your capital improvement plan that you want to replace the carpeting up there on the second floor in, 27, 28. So why wasn't it replaced before all of this work was done?
I had a $500,000 grant,
Uh-huh.
and it was just out of budget.
I see.
And it also has the least amount of wear. So by the time you've walked up all the way up the stairs, it just doesn't have quite the abuse that the first floor in the children's department in this room had.
Right.
So it was like, well, we can table that for now and we'll put it in for the future.
Okay. Yeah, it was more just the order of things. That's in terms of
Yes, it's
carpet
less
and then
need
building.
and no money.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
Sure. This is our new teen department, which is a much bigger space. You can see that we now have shelving going across the entire back wall. We have a new gaming area with seating, and kids watch each other play games, so little stools underneath. It's, again, already being used. Looks great. Everybody's really happy about it. And now our teens are kind of in the back, but we can still see them. So even if they get a little loud, they're not going to affect the general library use.
Is that the top left picture, Sue?
The gaming is in the top left. This whole area is the new teen department. We added 4 computers. And actually, 2 of them last year were Macs that were in our capital. And so 4 computers for the teens, 2 PCs and 2 Macs.
In my experience with teenagers, they tend to yell even when they have headphones on at the screen.
Yes.
So,
Well, that's why we put them in the back corner with
Yeah.
no other,
Right.
if they get a little loud, I mean, we can also see them from the desk, which is kind of nice
Yeah.
before they were hidden. So, okay. So I will begin with some background information. So our library app, I know you guys are probably sick of hearing it, but I have to tell you, we're up to almost 2,000 users. 539 were added last year. And I had to cover in the children's department last week because with the Ridge Road water main break, one of our staff had to run out. So I was downstairs and one of the patrons came through and she was like, and she held up her phone and she said, I love this app. This is my favorite app, my most used app on my phone. She was the salesperson back to me. She told me all the reasons. It's great. So it's nice to hear from the public that they actually really use and appreciate it. Our library cards are up this year, and last year we had a big push with the schools, so we had a lot of kids register who had never used the library. So we've increased even on top of that this year. So we're at 8,177 cards. 34% of our residents have library cards, and that's actually pretty consistent. But one thing to keep in mind is there's a lot of parents who have 2 or 3 kids that count in our population, but it's 1 library card. So we kind of have more use than that. But okay, our database stats. We fund through the library 21 databases. The state provides 4 databases for us, and our usage is up to over 42,000 this past year, which is a 67% increase. So, and the reference and technology transactions, I wanted to highlight, it's almost at 15,000. So when people say, oh, you have the internet, who uses the library? Well, those are almost 15,000 questions asked of our staff where they needed help. And that's not directional stuff like where's the bathroom or, how do I get to the study rooms? Those are all questions that, needed staff intervention. Oh, and our library visits were up last year. We are beyond pre-COVID numbers. So it's great to have hit the COVID milestone again and then gone up. Any questions on any of this? Okay, so this is our circulation, our books and material. So I'm going to start with the left-hand side with our circulation. Regular circ is up. Hoopla's flat, and if you remember, you probably, every year I tell you how much Hoopla gets used. We have a daily budget cap on it now, and it's pretty much by 9 a.m. people cannot take out Hoopla checkouts because we've hit our budget. So it's going to remain flat, but we've designed it that way because I could probably throw, I don't know, $30,000 more at Hoopla and it will get used. So we have to cap it. that I believe has helped to drive up our Overdrive numbers. So if people can't get an ebook or audiobook through Hoopla, they'll go to Overdrive. There's a lot of weights on Overdrive, but it's still our usage is up 12%.
And what's the difference, Sue?
Hoopla is a pay-per-use for us,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you go to get an audiobook, you can get it right away, and it may charge us $2.99, and you get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 3-week loan. Overdrive, we get through our consortium, Lion, and that has some bigger selection in some of our most popular books, but you also have to wait, and it's like a regular book. If it's checked out and somebody's using it, you have to wait your turn. So there's a bigger selection in Overdrive, but if you want something instantly, you're not going to get a bestseller instantly. You might be waiting, 2-3 months for it.
And is it a flat charge to the library, or is it a pay-per-use like the other?
Overdrive is a flat charge through our Lion fees, but we also do something called Overdrive Advantage, which we look at our highest holds and we do throw some money at that, so we can get, it goes to North Haven residents first. So if it was, the latest book that everybody wants, we will buy an extra copy or two.
All right.
But it's also, like say 30 uses or 50 uses, and then you have to rebuy the book.
Right.
So. And then physical items, that includes everything we have physical. So physical audiobooks on CD, our library of things, which we've expanded. So if you need gardening tools that you're only going to use once in a while, we have those. So we have a lot more items. You may not want to purchase, but we have some really interesting fun things up there in the library of things. So that's all physical items borrowed, so that circulation is up. What I've highlighted on the right in the yellow box, okay, so if you were to get a book, a hardcover bestseller book, it's about $25. The library does get a discount, so I use $18 in this formula for adult and teen books, and I use $9 for children's books because they can range from $3 to also $20. So $9 felt like a good number to use. So if every book that we circulated was purchased, the cost to North Haven residents would be pushing $2 million. So it would be $1,854,756. Audiobooks cost a little bit more, but I also use $18 in my figure here. So if you added everything that people took out from Hoopla, Overdrive, and print books, the cost is over $3 million that we're actually saving residents. So people ask about using the library and what the value is. It's over $3 million to our residents. And that's just the materials, not the space. Anybody have any questions about any of those stats?
So each of these things actually falls under a different category within your budget though, right? So Hoopla and Overdrive. Overdrive would be under Lion.
Correct.
In terms of the expense, but what would Hoopla be under? Is that
Materials.
also books, magazines, reference?
Yes.
Okay.
Sue, what are some examples of the physical items that you have?
So any of our media, so our CDs, our DVDs, Blu-rays, all of our library of things. So we have a bunch of puzzles. We have tools, like some different kind of tools, and all physical items includes print books too. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on. Okay, so usually I tell you about our programming. This year, instead of that, I'm going to just focus on summer and winter reading programs. And as a little background, when our teen librarian started, she was requested by the high school to run their summer reading program, which she did, and it was a great success. In 2024, we reached out to the reading coordinator for the school system and asked to see if we could collaborate on winter reading. That was also a great success, so we decided to partner for summer reading as well. And because winter reading worked out so well, and the high school collaboration worked out really well, the reading coordinator asked us if we can also take on the middle school summer reading. So this past year, we did summer reading for the entire school system. So that became our responsibility working with them. And with that, they promoted our summer reading, so it was a wonderful partnership, and our numbers grew. So we had a 52% increase in 1 year of participants in all of our summer reading programs. So it's been it's just a really nice collaboration, and just working with the schools. It's just good because you know that it's helping all the students.
So how exactly does the summer reading program for middle school and high school play into their curriculum? Because I'm seeing that the high school number is obviously much smaller than the middle school number. So I'm just wondering, how is it plugged in there?
I know, you'd hope it'd be higher.
You would hope, right.
So we actually, one of the databases that I showed, we do have an app called Beanstack, and they can log all of their reading and their hours, like how many books they've read, how many minutes they've read. And with the schools, we gave them access. So we purchased it, but they have access to all the statistics. And they can, they were doing like, I want to say like an ice cream party or different things with that. But it's still hard to get high school students to actually do their summer reading.
Right.
And they may have actually done it and not logged it on the app.
This is the thing.
But I
With
don't.
the younger kids, it's much more important the number of minutes per day and that type of thing. Obviously, as they get older, you really just want them reading.
I think it's as simple
on a
as either
regular
one or
basis.
two books.
Right,
I mean,
right.
they're real basic because they used to have certain books they had to read. Well, I mean, we did a lot of promotional within the app of like, what do you like, and you know, trying to get them interested.
Sure.
But you know, yeah, it's low on high school.
Yeah, it's for those who you know don't have this data in front of them. The middle school is 170 and the high school is only 37. But as you say, it could be that they're reading and just not reporting it. That's
Quite
the hope
possibly.
anyway. So
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody have any other questions about the summer and winter reading programs? Okay. Okay. So this is the budget. You all have it. You have it in the packets as well as what was provided by finance, but I'm just gonna jump past it. I left it in here for convenience.
So, Sue, if I can
Sure.
interrupt, you don't have to go through every line. Let's just go through
Oh,
the,
no, I
the
have
ones
two
that.
things,
Okay,
Tim.
good. All right.
Oops, I'm just gonna go back here.
Yep.
So this is probably the most important slide of this entire presentation. My entire budget is only a 3.52% increase. I tried to prep the budget knowing that this was gonna be a tight budget year. So 2 of my budget lines I've decreased, 4 have a 0% increase, and 7 are under 4%. So the only 2 things I would like to bring to your attention are the personnel lines and the programming. I will start with personnel. We have their typical contractual obligations. As you know, and you'll hear from other budgets as well, the minimum wage has, it's a mandated increase by the state, so that is, we have 1 position that affects. I do want to give the clerks and the part-time librarian a $1 an hour raise. They're not under a union contract, so it's just a nice standard of living raise. And we did convert one of the page, last year we had 2 page positions. We did convert one of the page positions to a clerk position. And that's because we were struggling with our Saturday coverage and our pages didn't work Saturdays. And they do a little bit more work, so it just helps out the staff all around. So under personnel, basically it's for raises and 1 position that was changed from a minimum wage to $20 an hour. Does anybody have any questions about the personnel lines?
I think
You said,
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead,
Nancy,
Tim.
you said page position? I'm sorry, in the minimum wage? What is that?
So we had 2 people who were making minimum wage, and of the clerks, we have 11 clerks. We now have 12 clerks and 1 page. So it all falls in the part-time, it's just how the breakdown works. They're just, one of the positions.
So this is one
yes.
person, you're saying?
Yes.
Is page just the name of the position?
Page is basically just put away books.
Oh.
Clerks work on the desk, they can put books away as well, but they do a lot of other tasks. They also are here for Saturday coverage.
Okay, so most of this is the clerks then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because it's $1
Right.
an hour raise across the board
Right,
for
okay.
all of them.
Yeah, I actually looked back at some of the historical data specifically for the personnel part-time, and it looks like the increase in 24-25 was 6%. This last year was 12%, and now, again, for the same number of people, 15 people, in 26-27 is another 6%. So I remember when we had that big jump of 12%, that there really was a big jump in the minimum wage. But the 6% you think is more due to the $1 an hour
Correct.
raise as opposed to just the minimum wage change?
And actually, the 12% was because one of our positions is a part-time librarian who makes much more money than a clerk position. And so we had converted that because that also helps us. I have another person available for Saturdays who can close the building and be responsible.
I see.
But we didn't have to add another full-timer, so it's kind of a win-win.
I want to go on to the
Yep.
programming side soon.
Yep, okay. So this is the big ask, and this is a huge increase in this budget line. And the reason is for it is our friends of the library have historically funded our reading programs and programming. This year, they have decided to cut the funding commitment by $4,000. We usually get close, or the last 2 years, about closer to $22,000. We did get a little more last year because they did fund our kiosk, but our typical asks, it's about $22,000, and this year they're, I want to say, 17.8 is what they've committed to us. So that's a tough loss for us. It's $4,000. So I will just tell you. Okay, we have also made cuts from the library, and we cut some programming. We cut one of our summer reading picnic and performances that we're going to have. We've cut several museum passes to accommodate this cut. And we've taken over the payments of BookPage and Tumble Books. BookPage is like a nice reader advisory magazine that people love. And Tumble Books is one of the online resources that the Children's Department uses. So we've already absorbed those costs, but we just don't have enough money. So we're requesting $4,000. $500 of it is for typical programming increases, and $3,500 is to help us continue with our summer and winter reading programs.
Sue, how, where is it here? How did you reduce telephone?
We have some hotspots, and we had 15 hotspots that were circulating, and we have reduced the number. Some of them have broken or gone out of service. So rather than purchase new hotspots, we're just reducing the lines.
So did the Friends give you a reason why they cut that much? Or is there any way we can get them to at least bring a little bit more of that back?
I've asked. They have cut that because they want to have $20,000 in the bank so that they can grow, so they can fund us for future programming. I will say, I did say, if we need this money now, you're kind of reducing our requests so that you can fund us more in the future that we haven't asked for yet. But they want to have $20,000 in the bank so that they can try to grow it.
Are they doing any fundraisers?
They are looking to see what additional fundraising they can do. But we manage their books, like they do all of, in the lobby, the bookstore that's there, they put the books out and they maintain it, but the staff takes all the payments for that. So they don't have to have somebody staffed for that. So, and they bring in roughly, I would say close to $1,000 a month. I would say between $800 and $1,000 a month for the bookstore. And then they have a membership drive.
Okay.
So I think they're trying to increase their membership drive. I think they're looking at additional fundraisers but at this point, they don't want to commit to additional funding.
All right, why don't we go on to the capital, please, Sue?
Sure. Okay, so there's 3 items in the capital request: the building management software, painting the children's department, and our digital lawn sign. Building management software is computer programming that our boilers and chiller are connected to, so we can control the temperature. But it's 25 years old, and when we had to make our last repair, they were using parts. They don't make the system anymore, so they were using parts from a system that somebody had removed. So it was older used parts, which they function, but once those parts run out, we're not going to be able to make repairs as needed. So we're running into that. There's 2 different quotes that were provided through the finance department, one through SNE, which is our current BMS company, and one through F&F, which is a little bit less. F&F is our HVAC company, and the new software would has one additional component that SNE does not have in it, just so they can tie everything in, but there's still less money. So everything is soup to nuts is updated with F&F.
So, Rich, you know about this, obviously, right? Okay.
The 37 is a capital item I'd like to see stay in this budget if possible.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's go on to the paint and then the sign, please.
Yep, so painting I think is kind of obvious. We did it probably, I want to say 7 years ago we did the painting, maybe 6 years ago. Actually, it was pre-COVID. So the children's department gets beat up, so they're the first on the list to get repainted. And then the digital lawn
I can
sign.
share that picture.
What?
I can share that picture.
Of what?
Children's department.
Oh, being beat up?
No, you painting in there.
Oh, I was one of the people who was painting the books on the, but I don't want to paint the whole department, Rich. I do a lot, but I'm not going to paint the whole department. Although we did spackle some holes and painted over those downstairs. Yes, so the digital lawn sign, in your packet at the end, I received the quote from Fast Signs last night, so I did include it at the back if you want to see the quote. It was not sent through from the finance department because it just wasn't ready yet, so I apologize for the timing, but it is there for the quote. And that came a tiny bit over 40,000. It came in at 40,852. And so during our strategic plan meetings, a lot of our community said they just are not aware of our programming. And we do quite a bit of advertisement, but a lot of people actually were requesting a sign for the front lawn that would be able to show different programs coming up. So that's what that is.
So I just want to let you know that Rich and I will have to handle this, because I believe in our zoning regulations, our planning and zoning regs, there's a prohibition on digital lawn signs.
Really?
So we'd have to, I'm gonna have to check this out. We may have to do an 8-24 internally to see if we can supersede that. But that's, I think that's gonna be an issue. So, but we'll let you know on this, okay?
Okay, and I did, when I met with Kevin from Fast Signs, we did discuss like size and the whole bit within zoning. I didn't know there was a digital block on that.
I'm gonna confirm that, but I believe that's part of the zoning regs for decades here in town.
Okay.
So, but we'll let you know on this, okay?
Okay, great. So does anybody have any questions about anything that was presented?
This would go on the Elm Street side. Which side? Where would this go?
Elm Street.
Elm Street.
Elm Street, okay.
So I just want to say I appreciate the fact that you recognize this is a very, very tough budget year for us, and the fact that you really kept your numbers low.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I get it. And if, you know, we've done a lot of improvements and, you know, we've been very fortunate and we've done a lot within our means. So we were trying to keep as steady, you know, as steady as we could.
Any other questions for Sue from the members? Thanks, Sue.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you, everybody.
Nice
Thank you,
presentation.
Sue. Very nice.
Tim, if you want, I'll go right in.
I'm sure we can keep moving. Just
All right.
let's get to the page. What page is it?
34. We'll start with senior center. In your pack, you do have a little recap of each department, recs, and
Keep it
senior
for you.
center.
If the audience could just hold it down a little bit, please.
If you, at your leisure, read the scenario, but the long and short of it is the senior center's probably increased about 42% in membership. Paulette is saying fantastic would be an understatement to the job she's been doing there. It's very active, it's very alive, it's very packed. And if you look at their budget request, the only significant increase, and it's only $5,000 really, is increasing personnel part-time, a little bit more in overtime. And she's looking for another $1,500 in event programming. Building maintenance, again, was a $5,000 increase. Unlike, if we're renovating, doing renovation work at Town Hall. Police building was renovated, fire buildings were renovated, library is just in the process of being renovated. Once we get that little bit of software that Sue had mentioned, library should be in a pretty stable position, but senior center and rec, a lot of maintenance has been done in those buildings over the years and is catching up with us. So that's what the increase there is, maintenance. If you don't have any questions on senior, I'll go to rec.
Two
which is
questions,
on
Rich.
page
So, I apologize. So did you
35.
say why the part-time was going up 9%? Did I miss that?
Basically, the biggest part of it is increase in membership is going up 42%. So I have a combination of bringing a part-time person in more to supplement the staff. And also, we need to transition a few positions.
Transition
Judy,
it.
who has stepped up tremendously, has never left there for us. She wants to pull back a little bit. So,
I mean, I know it's only $4,000, $5,000.
yeah.
And then just a general question, on all these departments, do they include the upcoming contractual wage increases?
Yes, the only one that is, if you cross the budget, the only union contract coming up to do is Public Works,
Okay,
which is ends in June.
Okay.
I'll start negotiations as soon as they have their executive board in order, sometime late January. I would
Okay, so-
expect to have it completed by July.
so when we get to Public Works, there's no increase for them, or you made
I
it?
did put it in because
You
that's
assumed,
what, I'm assuming where I'm gonna,
okay,
I know where my line is, so.
yeah, all right.
35 is
Uh,
rec.
Sorry,
I'm
other
sorry.
members, any questions on the senior center before Rich moves on? All right,
Are
35
there any, I'm sorry, are there any plans to actually take proactive steps for building at the senior center? I know that this is something that has come
It's
up.
not really building, there's outside maintenance that needs to be done, and
Right.
there's maintenance on their heating and HVAC system that
Right,
needs to be handled.
but given the increase in membership, it seems like, I've certainly been hearing from a lot of seniors that they kind of max out on a lot of their events, and people that want to participate can't because of this increase in interest, so.
Residents do get a priority over people from outside, but yes, there are events that will max out.
Right,
Space
So,
limitations.
There's space limitations, it's a big building, but
no,
still.
no, absolutely, I'm.
And there is
so I guess
really no place else in town to hold it.
Right. So I guess that's the question is, are there any plans to perhaps, expand that bigger room by, eliminating one of the smaller rooms or any other, plans?
The smaller rooms have their own functions. We
Right.
actually, just recently, one of the, we'll call it reading rooms, which was underutilized and not utilized, we revamped and it became another program room, which is when you first walk in where the couch was and on that left when you first come in from that door. We've changed that room around. We reduced the size of the computer room. There's been modifications we've already made inside to accommodate the change in programming.
Right.
But the building is a building. You can't expand the building. There's no place to expand it. So we utilize what we have.
So I guess that, again, I've been to some of these events and certainly.
Oh, you'll get the holiday
there are
parties.
bingo events every week, not even just
Yeah.
the big holiday parties, but bingo every week is,
Yeah,
you know,
the place is
absolutely
jumping.
Right.
So it's a
Well-
42% increase.
Let me just jump in here, Rich.
Yeah,
sure.
So what we have done, and I go to these events, when we outsource some of the larger events, we went to Traditions in Wallingford, right?
They have
So
their
I was there with all the seniors there around Christmas time. So we're trying to do it that way.
I see.
Maybe within the next 5 years, there will be a capital expansion plan, but not right now. The key is, as Rich said, to do the deferred maintenance on the senior center building. And our other priority is to get Parkside up and running
Yes.
with a grant to do the same thing at Parkside that we did at 555 Temple Pines when we renovated that whole facility there. Those are our priorities right now.
Thank you.
Next, Rich.
Rec, again, you have an increase in the only significant changes in their lines, you have an increase in overtime, more in line with what it's been costing us. Rec maintenance, for the same reason, there's a $20,000 increase in their maintenance line. As an example, we just had the boiler go down, which you'll probably catch those in your February meeting, the cost getting pulled together for what that costs. The buildings are old steam systems. Some of the rooms are outdated for ADA requirements. We're gonna try and see little by little if we can chip away over that for the next few years. And the custodial, which is what we talked about last time, we eliminated a position and we're outsourcing it.
And the 62 is based on what, Rich?
The
Is it a
62,
contract?
that's, yeah, it's a contract with Platinum. But we had a full-time position, just their medical benefits alone were 40,000. And the last one is on page 33. Community service. Which basically, other than contract personnel line, our professional consultants went up 19%, which is BH Care. There's kind of two things that make that up. One of them is a fixed contract price, 33.
33, sorry, 36, 40.
One of them is a fixed contract price with BH Care. The other part of it is we have an APRN who does prescriptions for us that is based on demand. So we take an educated guess where we think it is. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less. But the lion's share of that, though, is BH Care Direct's cost. If we look at their capital request,
So again, Rich, that's, the BH Care is a contract?
yeah, BH Care is a contract. They oversee the clinicians.
Right.
If I could, for those that don't know, the importance of that is the fact it gives us state certification, that it's a state certified overseeing of our own counselors. And by doing it that way, which we did years ago, we saved $25,000 to $30,000. We'd have to apply for the license and then hire somebody to do it. So that is an outsourcing that saved us money down through the years, and that's why that's there.
Their capital items, basically, there was painting and power washer for $20,000, pool locker room HVAC, which needs a revamp for $55,000. That was in last year's budget too, that was cut. Some painting for the senior center and pool maintenance, which we have every year, which we expend every year. Or they'll drain it down, clean the pool, regrout what needs to be regrouted, regrout some parts of the deck.
Which building's a painting and power washing on, Rich?
It's a combination of two between rec and senior center. Again, being a tight budget year, if that's one of the items that ends up being cut, we'll try and see if there's a way, if we have a mild winter, and maybe we can do something with Public Works.
So
That rolls up those
going
three
back to
departments.
the community services professional consultants, just looking at the actual expenditures, not necessarily just the budgeted amounts, but it looks like we've gone from, in 22-23, we went from actual of about 132,000 to then it went down in 23-24 to about 125,000. And then actual for 24-25, as we can all see, it jumped up by over $70,000 here, it looks like, to 191. So,
You're looking at the strictly the BH Care line?
no,
Strictly-
yeah, professional consultants, yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
so that's all that. So it looks like a pretty substantial jump in just 1 year of
BH Care's
actuals.
contract has increased every year.
Right.
And it is a written contract. The other item that I mentioned, which fluctuate,
Right,
basically when we bring outside people from BH Care in, which is outside their contract for prescriptions.
right,
We don't have doctors on staff.
Right.
We need a licensed person for prescriptions, so it's based on demand at that point. There's
so
some
the
years where
BH
there
Care
may not
is
be a lot.
entirely fixed?
Excuse me?
The BH Care contract is
The
fixed or
BH
not
Care
fixed?
contract is a fixed contract.
Okay.
But we could contract with them for outside services when we need prescriptions done, when we need an APRN to come in to deal with certain clients that have medical needs as well.
Yeah, particularly on the psychiatrist side,
Yes.
psychiatry side. We
Right.
have to have an APRN to administer medications, so these are the services that we have that a lot of towns don't have.
And
There's
if
a
you
cost to
look
it.
at, if you look at the revenue for the same thing for community service,
Uh-huh.
it's way above. It's probably at 60 some odd percent, and we're only halfway, 67% say, we're only halfway through the year. So that additional cost, both in that budget and these other budgets, are offset by the fact that we are generating more revenue through insurance companies.
Actually, through end of November,
I got
We-
through,
yeah,
well, I'll
maybe you
tell you
have
where it is.
December.
I'll tell you where it is through the end of December.
Sure,
Through December, they are at 134,000, 67.1% of budget. So 6 months through the year, they're at 67% of budget. So they're,
These are billings that we do
those are billings
for
that have
BH
been
Care services.
received.
Yeah, received, right.
They're still billing in the pipeline.
Right.
I see.
Or we can bill for some of the services here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that we do bill for those services. If
Right.
they have the coverage.
Yep.
At the same point.
Right.
Just as fire, we do with fire with paramedics. If
Right.
there's coverage not there, the town absorbs it.
So given this enormous fluctuation, how exactly
Well, it's
do
not
you?
enormous, but it's an educated guess we make. The biggest part of that is, 170,000, 180,000, whatever their contract is. That's the biggest part of it. The other number is just educated guess, just like we do with maintenance in buildings, just like we do with all those little nuances that can't be qualified. You use a little bit of instinct, a little bit of track history, knowing where you are in the world.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm saying is in 24-25, we budgeted 145,000 and we spent 192.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to get a sense for, and that wasn't the case in the 2 previous years. So
No.
I'm trying to get a sense for how do we?
Whatever medical happened that year. It could have been, there was a year we were getting more, but then again, look at those same years and see if your revenue got driven up. If revenue ended up being a lot more in those years.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to
So
explain here.
it does balance.
Sure, sure.
We may increase our expenses even in this current budget, but that's more than offset by the increase in revenue we get compared to what we also budgeted.
Which is 17% higher than it was in terms of
Yeah.
straight lining it. So anytime you see an increase of expenses, there's an increase in revenue. This is utilization driven by patients who need help. So it's not entirely an incremental cost. It's an incremental cost that's offset by incremental revenue.
Exactly.
All right, any other questions for Rich? All right, why don't we break? I don't see the chief here yet, so why don't we break until we see the chief, which I'm guessing, did you tell him 9:30? What time did you tell him, Rich?
I think the has them asked for 9:30, so.
Okay, so let's break until the chief, and we can do the fire department, okay? All right, thank you, chief. Please go right ahead when you're ready.
Appreciate it. Thank you, members of the board, for this opportunity to present the fire department budget. I do plan on this being, at least on my end, a brief presentation as compared to prior years. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Several members of the fire commission are here with me, and I want to introduce to you Deputy Chief Jeff Naples, who's new to us within the last year as well. So if it's nothing I can't answer, I may ask him to help me out a little bit here. I think 2 is better than 1, and there's a couple of parts here where I'll ask him to cover things that are purview to his responsibilities. So what we typically do is open every workshop with what's changed in the last year, or what's new really. And so In this particular case, I want to cover a few things that the department is working on. One is High Five Fridays, so we're visiting the schools on Fridays, seeing the children. Two different approaches to that. One is get children to know that firefighters are not only look mean, but they're friendly, in that we are humans and we are persons that have kids and have kids in the school system. And also on the high school side is recruitment for volunteers and for career. We work closely with the police department in our CERT team. I've talked about CERT quite a bit in the past. You see their bus out all the time, different community events. We have a presence at the concert series. We're working pretty heavily right now. If you haven't seen Channel 8 or if you haven't looked at our Facebook page, I encourage you to do so. At the Northeast Training Center, we've put together several demonstration fires. We looked at kitchen fires, we looked at Christmas tree fires, we looked at electrical safety, turkey fryers, a whole number of things. And we actually are doing live fires demonstrations at that facility. So definitely check it out. That's been important to us. Not too long ago, within the last month, we partnered with the Red Cross and installed several dozen smoke detectors throughout the community. I don't have those exact numbers, but it was, you think that when we put the messaging on all the time about smoke detectors in homes, that people would have smoke detectors in their homes, and we found quite the opposite. It's different when they're knocking on your door saying, can we come in? And then people realize the smoke detector they thought was good, in fact, it is not. And so that was a successful campaign. And then we were partnered with the library. Happy to follow them. They do tremendous work, and the director here, Sue Griffiths, and us continue to work on a lot of public safety campaigns. I've talked a lot about the CERT team in the past, and they do phenomenal work, and there are several dozen volunteers that do great work. But this year I thought I'd shift focus a little bit and cover some of the fire marshal's office. I don't think it's something that we talk about enough, so I want to bring some attention to what the fire marshal's office really is doing here in town. So you can see this is a 2025 spread of our activity. So you can see just about 650 inspections were conducted in 2025, just over 400 plan reviews. Now you think that plan reviews are just for new buildings, right? But they're not. They're any time that a new tenant comes into a space, there has to be a plan review associated with that to make sure the tenant's going to use the space appropriately. So there's a lot of plan reviews that take place with the businesses that are coming and going through town. And then on the permit side, those are commercial permits only. So the fire department does not get involved in residential permits. We get involved in commercial permits only. The one caveat to that being on solar. We do have a say on solar permits for obvious reasons if the house were to be involved in fire. When you look at how many inspections an inspector should be able to do a year, the going average is 300 to 400 inspections a year. And so you can see that we're right there in terms of how many inspections that we're doing. We have 1.5 employees that are dedicated to the inspections. And so we're pretty much right there in terms of where we need to be. In fact, at times we're a little bit short. And here's why we're short, is those same inspectors are tasked with investigating fires. And so not every fire needs to be investigated, but certainly the ones that have a significant dollar loss because the insurance company, the adjuster, comes looking for a report and a cause and origin as to what happened with that fire and what our findings were. And those same individuals are tasked with going in and spending hours, sometimes days, investigating those fires, all times of day and night, working with the insurance companies. And so that's about 20 of those a year that we have to really spend several hours investigating. Some of these not so much, I didn't include those, but there's about 20 a year that we have to spend several hours providing a pretty comprehensive report.
And Chief, that's the half, because I thought we had 2 fire marshals.
So we have 1.5. So one's full-time, one's part-time.
Okay.
Yep. And so when we look at our surrounding towns, something that's a little bit different here is we use CERC, right? So that's it's the website where all of the Connecticut towns list their data and their geographics. And so when you look at this, we're able to find the number of businesses in towns. And so North Haven sits at about 2,900 businesses. And those businesses we have to inspect anywhere from 1 year, some are 4 years, but most are 1 to 3 years. And so when you look at that, what you can see is we look at some comparable towns. We are really lean in our fire marshal's office. We have 1 full-time and 1 part-time inspector, and you can see that several other towns that have less or comparable have significantly more people in their fire marshal's office. So I'm not asking for more fire marshals. I'm not asking for anybody else. I'm just trying to bring light to the fact that they do incredible work, and we cover their expenses. So in fiscal year 16-17, I proposed to this board the collection of fees. Since that time, we've collected $4.3 million in fire fees. And our expenses on an annual basis, somewhere around $150,000 to $200,000. So we're definitely hitting the mark, and it's a staffing model that works for us.
Excuse me, Chief, quick question. Within the fire marshal's office, are you considered the fire marshal?
So statutorily, I'm considered a fire marshal, and I'm licensed or certified as a fire marshal to oversee their operations, but I don't typically get involved in fire marshal activity day to day, no.
Right. And one of the deputy chiefs is the deputy fire marshal?
Correct, yep, just went to school, but again, their day-to-day activities are not involved in that, no. And so the same thing with these, several of these towns, their chiefs or their deputy chiefs are licensed or certified fire marshals, but their day-to-day activities is not doing inspections or investigations.
So when they're listed as one fire marshal and
That
two
is
deputy
sole
fire
fire marshal, that is not a deputy chief or a chief. Yeah.
I see,
Yep.
understood. Got it. Thank you for clarifying.
Going to cover some of the operational line increases. There weren't many for this year. Contractual replacement staffing, increasing it by $32,000. That is predominantly due to contractual wage increases and electricity increasing it by $15,000 a request, and that's like anybody else right now that pays a UI bill. The bills are going up, no different for us than it is for your homes, and we need to be able to cover that utility. In terms of the building maintenance and repair line, I know this is a line that often gets discussed, open to discussion, whatever needs to happen here, but I need the finance board to understand that this supports 4 fire stations and several outbuildings. So not only are we talking about the fire station itself, but we have garages detached in the back that need to be maintained, and all of these buildings have overhead doors, one of them has an elevator, a couple have commercial hoods, there's sprinkler systems in place, there's generators in place. There's a lot of items in these buildings that need to get repaired. You know, I can think back to times that, you know, people will drive by and they'll say the lights are out in the fire station on the outside, and I'll say, yeah, I'm aware of it. I'm waiting to get to the point where I can justify calling an electrician to come in and start spending the money to get all these lights repaired on the outside. But it costs a significant amount of money. The other thing that we're doing is we've incurred the cost of the landscaping. And so with that, that is something that we need to make sure that we cover the expense for. That's it for operational line increases.
Okay, before we, let's see if the members have questions. I certainly do. Let's go over the personnel piece, please, Paul.
Sure, I have that later in my budget presentation, if that's okay.
That's fine, sure.
Okay.
Members, anything else you'd like to ask Paul about? I unfortunately have my numbers for last year, but what's your electricity running now? Do you happen to know, Paul?
I
Maybe
can find it in
Rich
the,
might have it, looks like.
Yeah, I can find it.
I
in
think
the budget.
I have through November, but I don't have through December, about 45.6% of the budget, about $25,000.
When I looked at the reason that we're increasing this too, is I looked at the closeout for last year, and it was over, I believe, in that line, electricity line.
Right now, they're 54, through December, 54.6%, $30,000.
When you say close up, Paul, you're saying that there were some bills that came late or didn't
No,
get
there was an
paid?
overage in last year in that line.
Yeah.
For the utilities, for electricity.
65,000.
Yeah, it was it's in your budget. 65,000,
65,178. Paul, quick question on medical supplies. I know there was a time there, certainly during COVID and post-COVID, when all of a sudden the cost of medical supplies just shot up. But I'm just looking at some of the actuals, and at least for 24, 25, the actual, the budgeted was 69, and we came in a little over 51. And this year, at least through November, we're actually at about 29%. Is that a function of kind of when the billing comes in, or
Typically.
what's your feel as far as the cost of medical supplies right now?
So medical supplies, we haven't increased in a couple of years, and that's
Mhm.
why it's not even being asked for right now either. We've got it stabilized. One of the things that's helped a lot is that we're able to, we can cover this in more detail in a few minutes, but we've been able to shave down a lot of our medical calls, so we're not going to as many as perhaps we once were, especially during the COVID time.
Mhm.
And then during COVID as well, some of the expenses just went through the roof in
Right.
terms of cost, and
Right.
so they've stabilized and come back down.
Okay.
Medical supplies, just, for the board's awareness, are housed at headquarters in a rather, small utility room.
Mhm.
And that's where we inventory everything from, and that is where, as supplies are needed, that's where they're drawn from. So we've always got to make sure that you have, good stock of medical supplies. You don't want to run out and you get.
No, absolutely. I'm just trying to get a sense for the
Sure.
supply and demand issues. So, vehicle maintenance and repairs. I know this has certainly been something that's been a hot topic for quite some time, and you're asking for an additional $10,000. But you really should have some two new engines, about to take possession of a new ladder truck and other new vehicles. Is your expectation that that line should actually go down with these new pieces of
I do
apparatus?
not see that line continuing to go up. The one thing we have to be careful of, and
Mhm.
that's going to be covered again shortly in a few minutes here, is the bid for our maintenance contract
Mhm.
recently went out, and the labor costs associated with that bid were significantly higher than they are now. And so we're trying to offset that with, like you said, newer apparatus
Mhm.
that do not require as much maintenance as a fleet that we're retiring right now.
Mhm.
So we hope that stabilizes. That's the intent.
Okay.
Any other questions from the members on this page, or do we want to go on to capital?
Sure. So capital, this is a listing of what it should be in your report. We can cover each in detail as I start to move through it. But along the idea of fleet maintenance, I'd like to ask Deputy Chief Naples to cover a few things regarding that specific line because it's something that he manages every day.
So thank you again, and Mrs. Barrett, thank you for your question in regards to the fleet maintenance. We did have a contract that we were working underneath. It was a 3-year contract with the New England Fire Apparatus, which is right down the street here. It services all of our apparatus. They had just recently, we signed a contract a couple weeks ago. There was a 70% increase just in their hourly labor rate. And as you can tell by this slide, we have a very, very big range of aging fleet from, two apparatus that are only, 2 years old to apparatus that are almost 26, 27 years old. So we are accruing a lot of costs, saying that every bit of maintenance and repair has to be sent out for these services. So again, it is an aging fleet, and as you can tell, some of the older apparatus are costing us, more money along the lines of also being out of service. And that out of service time is very, stressful for our apparatus and for our response to emergency calls.
Are there other options in terms of repair services that you could look into, or?
There's obviously the thought of having an in-house mechanic
Mhm.
that is going to be ASC certified and being able to do these repairs in-house. That's something that we can look at down the line, not only to save money, but also to have a quicker turnaround time. So our apparatus are not out of service for a prolonged period of time.
Mhm.
And those superintendent of apparatus, if that's what you wanted to name them, could also have ancillary functions, along the lines of fixing SCBA bottles, even station repairs, some minor stuff with equipment that we also send out to some, smaller dealerships, as well as responding to, structure fires, having the ability to assist on scene if an apparatus fails there, or if there's other ancillary tasks around the fire ground that need to be accomplished. That's an option for that individual to be able to do.
If you did that, then would you have to keep an inventory of parts, or?
Most likely, that would be the best way to do that. Right now, unfortunately, there's a 29% increase in the parts alone that our manufacturer, that New England Fire is charging us for. So to be able to keep those parts in-house and purchasing them ahead of time and having an inventory would also save a tremendous amount of money.
I guess my question is, do you have an option other than New England Fire?
So we did put this out to bid, and we had two other contractors bid on this, and they were the lowest.
I see.
So that covers the fleet maintenance. The couple things to just keep in mind with that is that some of these apparatus, we have to put them through required annual preventive maintenance checks. So on the engines, it's the pump that needs to be certified. On the ladders, it's the ladder. And then on every apparatus, it's the DOT road check for tires. And then there's obviously preventive maintenance you do on anything. Some of these have generators on board, so the generators need to be maintained as well as the engine itself. And so what I ask is, when you look at this line, just recognize that some of these apparatus have been through their annual PM, which is when we see a lot of costs, and then others have not. Obviously, we can't send all of them in the first 6 months of a fiscal year. We spread it out to try to maintain operational efficiency as well.
The apparatus that are labeled with the small star to the left-hand side, those are the ones that have not gone for their DOT, their pump, and their preventive maintenance. That's about $2,500 to $3,000 of an expense. And as you can see, the two engines on the bottom, those were the ones that were purchased in 2024 based off the LSN numbers. And you can see that at this point, they have all been under warranty, and we have not yet sent both of those out for their PM. Engine 2 just came back yesterday with their finished PM, so that will be coming soon.
So this 78 is a part of the vehicle maintenance line that's shown budgeted at 180. Is that where this lies?
Correct. One thing to just look at when you're I think we got to draw attention to on that is that LSN number. So we call that lifetime service number. So that's a static number. That number's fixed to the apparatus. It'll never change. So take, for example, Tower 1 is an 18-01. That means it's a 2018 apparatus, and it was the only one that we received in 2018. So that's kind of how you can read that. The apparatus number designation itself, we may change from time to time based on whatever we have and trying to rotate the fleet, but the LSN number is fixed. So one of the things you can kind of see when you look at that is the older the apparatus is, the more expensive it is to maintain. The older the apparatus is, the harder it is to get parts, because the downtime is actually what hurts us the most is in operations. So there's a lot to look at there, but are there any questions regarding?
Which ones are the rescue units? You have a rescue unit you're looking for, right? An ambulance? Is that on there?
Yes, correct. It's
That's
actually the
rescue
second
too?
one down. It's
One at the top or two at the
1301.
All right, hold on. Let them answer, please.
Sorry.
Sorry, I apologize. It's the second one down. It says Rescue 2.
Okay.
It's LSN 1301. It's been out of service for 41 days. That number is going to obviously increase. This slide was done a couple days ago, and that rescue is still out of service right now.
And rescue 1 is down the bottom, and that's all we have, just the 2.
That is correct, and that is a 2020 purchase.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to capital requests, you'll see that we have in the capital line replacement of our rescue, just talked about now, it's a 2013. That mileage needs to be updated. It's a little bit more mileage than that now, but the mileage isn't necessarily what concerns us. It's the fact that it's a 2013. Again, parts are getting scarce. And the other thing to just keep in mind is the fact that it says ambulance. And I want to spend some time talking about what that means. And so ambulances in the state of Connecticut are highly regulated. You cannot just take any vehicle and put the word ambulance on it. It's a state regulation. So they're inspected once a year. The other thing they also do is they mandate exactly which type of chassis and which type of apparatus are allowed to become ambulances. So in other words, it keeps us from anybody from buying a van and calling it an ambulance. You can't do that. But what we do is, while we don't transport all the time, we have the ability to transport. From a licensure standpoint, from a medical control standpoint, if we did not have that word ambulance on there, if something were to happen right now and we were waiting for an ambulance to arrive, and one of the 2 rescues that we call them were on scene, and the paramedics and the EMTs thought that transport was immediate, needed to happen right now, we are licensed and able to transport you or I or anybody to the hospital right now. We would not be able to do that if it didn't say ambulance. And so the reason I bring it up is because we are talking about it being a 2013, and we've waited in this town in the past to replace rescues until they failed going to calls. And I don't think that's appropriate. We've got to start to look at what we can do to replace this rescue, because I don't want that to happen. It does get placed into service quite often, gets placed into service every Tuesday, so we can keep it rotating in the fleet and give rescue one time to get some maintenance done on it as well. And then obviously it gets used quite extensively for callbacks and for storm coverage and things of that sort.
So Paul, I understand, and you even noted in frankly your 5-year plan that the lead time on a lot of fire vehicles is fairly long. So if this were to be budgeted, when would you expect it to be delivered?
So that's a great question. Ambulances, fortunately, are not quite to the extent of delays that fire apparatus are right now. Engines are taking 4 years, aerials are taking 3 years. Ambulances, we can usually get within the year.
And Chief, you had explained to me when you and the Deputy Chief took me on the tour earlier this week that the ambulance is actually composed of 2 different parts. There's the chassis, or the truck, if you will, and then there's the box.
Correct.
And as you just mentioned, the 2 have to be certified to be, matched. But really what fails is the truck, the engine.
The engine,
right?
correct. Yep.
So would it behoove us to simply buy a new engine and keep the same box?
It's something that we can look at. I'd have to get a mechanic involved to see. It might limit us on what chassis we can purchase, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we just got to make sure that the mount and the way that you would plug it in and so forth would still be something that would work. But it's an option. There's departments out there that do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. The box because we're not transporting every call, the boxes, the inside where the patient compartment is in good shape in these apparatus.
Right. Yeah. And it could very well be that accessing just the chassis and then ultimately putting the 2 together might even be a shorter turnaround time than trying to buy the entire thing together.
Sure. If the board were considering replacement of this, it is certainly something that we can cost out.
Right. So that would be helpful, those numbers. Thank you.
I mentioned a few minutes ago about our training center. There's been a lot of activity up there. I encourage you to if you're going to Big Y or something, just take a drive back there and look around. The new garage is to the right on the top picture up there. We're keeping our CERT vehicle in there. We're keeping our training engine in there, which we've talked about in the past. We've talked about as we replace engines and apparatus to be able to keep an engine for training. So the engine that's in there will not go to calls. It was not on the document earlier because it doesn't go anywhere. It basically lives right there. But that's important for us because if we're pulling hose and operating as a training environment with it, and then an incident comes in, we're not having to pack the hose up and go to the call. The engine can stay there. It's committed to training and training only. And so that's advantageous to us. But there's a lot of equipment up there. There's a lot of inventory for the town, and as we start to build it out more, there's gonna be significantly more property up there. So in the capital, I've asked for $30,000 to secure the perimeter fencing. That is not intact right now at all. The entire north side, there is no fencing, and there is no bona fide way to enter and exit, and there's also no CCTV coverage, camera coverage at all. So we've seen evidence in the past of loitering, different uses of the property that probably aren't legal, and we'd like to be able to secure that area and for liability purposes and to make sure that nothing happens in terms of theft.
Is there security lighting on there right now, Paul? Maybe the kind that goes on when there's movement in the area?
I'm sorry, what was the question, sir?
Is there security lighting on the buildings?
There is no lighting. No, so
Motion sensor.
because of zoning, we weren't able to put any kind of outside lighting up. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So the only lighting that's on there is egress lighting because it's code, but there's no
right.
floodlights that we can put
Okay.
on. Yeah.
Sorry, there was a couple other things you had on your budget, right?
Yes.
Let's not go too fast in. I know a couple of them, the lease is already in place, right?
Correct.
The 300 and the 216 as well, right?
Yeah, so we covered the rescue, the education equipment we're going to cover, I believe, in a few minutes. Training center and security, I'm going to cover the needs assessment shortly.
You said education, do you mean extraction?
Extrication, yeah, I'm sorry, did I say
Extrication, sorry, my
Extrication,
mistake, okay.
yeah.
Sorry, the lease is already in place, right?
Correct.
What about this study here? Is that coming up?
That's coming up.
All right. This lease is for the new ladder we just, that's coming in, right?
Correct, yeah.
Right,
It's in,
okay.
it should be in service within the next 30 days.
All right, you covered the fencing. Then one more question, if you don't mind, before we go into the personnel.
Sure.
We do have a 5-year plan. It's on page 47. You have yours, just like the other departments. Obviously, you've got things budgeted every year, including an engine for next year, and you noted that takes 3 to 4 years for delivery. So, have we placed an order for this engine right now?
It's a placeholder that's in the process of being canceled because we don't have the money appropriated to it.
Okay.
So it's in the 5-year capital plan to put it in the workshop session next year. This truck was scheduled to come in on August of 2027. This is the one that we had to cancel because we don't have the money appropriated. So that money is not in this budget. $216,000 is for the truck that's $1,754,000 that we authorized, and that $216,000 will be in the capital plan for the next 9 years. It'll be $216,000 to pay for that over the next 9 years.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right, sorry, Paul.
That's fine, no problem. I'm going to start to get into some personnel requests. I'm going to start with something that I expect there to be some conversation. I hope there's a conversation about it, and that is the emergency response social worker. So I'll give you the background as to how this came about, because it's coming directly from the staff that are sitting behind me today. We've experienced significant loss in the department the last 3 years. We've had 3 members that are in their 40s, unfortunately, pass away unexpectedly. That's left a tremendous void in the department that's completely immeasurable. We've had firefighters who have sought counseling. We've had firefighters who have gone out, unfortunately, for outplacement. It's something that we live with every day right now. And unfortunately, what happens in this environment, unlike many others, is that you're reminded of these things constantly when you go to calls. So it's one thing if you experience something, unfortunate in your life, and then, you don't have to deal with it every day. But every single day, these firefighters are going out and working codes, and so there's constantly triggers, right, that are constantly building. And unfortunately, it gets to the point where it surfaces in a lot of these cases. And so after the most recent loss that we had in the department, we reached out to make sure that we were doing what we had to do. We were doing what was right in the department. And what we found was that there was some towns that have employed emergency response social workers within their police departments or within their fire departments. And they do a tremendous job. And 2 of them, well, one of them really, with this title, was offered to us to come over and meet with the staff, meet with the personnel. And we did so over the course of about a week. And I got to tell you, the impact that it had was remarkable. And the reason why is because this individual works with police officers and firefighters in the towns that they come from. They're employed by the police department or the fire department. And so they build a relationship with those personnel. And I think that's part of what we need to start to look at is the mental health and well-being of our emergency responders here in town, both on the police side and on the fire side. Because what we have to recognize is that our responders are human, which is why I open with that, and they do have to deal with some unfortunate consequences from time to time. But having a relationship with somebody is imperative to be able to have the ability and the confidence to want to talk. And so what this individual would do is work out of the police department half the time, work out of the fire department the other half of the time, find an office space for them, it's fine. But they'd have a relationship with the staff so that if any of my personnel are having trouble in their personal lives and something they experienced at work, there's a relationship there to be able to go and talk to that person. That's going to do so much in terms of the morale of the department, and it's probably going to cut down on things like sick time and other things that should be important to this board. But then the other thing that we're looking at is the void that we currently have in the community. So there are homes that we respond to 2 or 3 times a day right now, at times. I'm not saying it happens every day, but 2 or 3 times a day. And what do the firefighters do? They go out, they pick the person up, they put them back to bed, they put them back in the chair, they do whatever they got to do, and that's it. That's where it stops. And then unfortunately, a couple hours later, whether it's a mental health crisis, whether it's a health crisis, whatever it might be, they call 911 again. We go back. my firefighters, that's about all they can do. They're not licensed workers. They don't have contacts for all the people in town that they can talk about. They can't spend 30, 40 minutes with the person trying to build up a relationship to be able to build up any kind of opportunity to talk about other kinds of care or the kind of housing that might be available. And so this individual would do just that. They would identify the crisis cases that police and fire are responding to, and then we would be able to build out a system where that individual can go and follow up. That individual can go to the house the next day, follow up, find out, hey, you've called the police department X number of times, you've called the fire department X number of times. Here are some of the services in town that might be available to you. Now, you might be saying that we can do that now, and we can't. Our current contract that we have with BH Care does not allow for home visits. I've spoken with BH Care representatives. They're supportive of this because it's something that they cannot currently provide. In order for people to be seen here in town, they have to have the ability to get to Lindsley Street. And a lot of our community members that are suffering like this don't have the ability to drive or to commute. And so this is super important, I feel like, for the department. Is it new? Yes. Is it something that you're going to find in a lot of departments? No. But it's something I think that's the next step. I do see it potentially cutting back on some of the call volume that the fire department goes to. I'm not going to speak for the police department, but I can tell you that it would cut back on some of the fire department, and it would help the personnel tremendously. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
This would be community outreach. This person would not only service the police and fire department, but also
The community.
would know what resources are available out in the community.
Yeah, and so that's the important part is if it's drug and alcohol addiction, they'll know services that the individual can go to. If it's a hoarding case, they'll know places that we can refer to. If it's anything else going on, the services, and they change, right? It's something that changes month to month sometimes, some of these services. So it's not like it's something we can just hand somebody and go here. There needs to be sometimes an hour plus conversation with these individuals that are in a complete state of crisis. And that's exactly what this person would do. It would be a licensed clinical social worker that is trained to recognize when he or she needs to call for help, right? But is also trained to know that there's services that we can provide not only to our staff, but to the public as well.
Would this cost be shared between you guys and the police department?
Right now we share dispatching, right? Dispatchers, and that cost isn't between police and fire. It's all in the police budget. So I have no problem with this living in the fire department budget. And the police chief and I have already talked about the fact that we would split the time.
But just to follow up, this is 100% of the cost. Will there be another 80 when we get
No, sir. That's 100% of the cost.
Okay. And you mentioned BH Care already, Paul. So right now the firefighters using BH Care.
They are not. Firefighters are using EAP.
Yeah.
Our community uses BH Care. Here's a problem with EAP. It is not something that is wholly supported by members of the department, and it's for these reasons. When you call the EAP crisis line, they'll call you back within an hour. You'll typically go and see a provider in the area.
Yeah.
And it's covered for the first 3 visits. Doesn't hit your insurance.
Mm-hmm.
After that, starts hitting your insurance.
Right.
Right. So that's a barrier sometimes for some individuals between co-pays and so forth. But that's not so much the issue for some of my career staff. For some of the volunteer staff, perhaps.
Yeah.
But the logistics of it is that when you walk into the office, who do you know?
Right.
The provider's going to be somebody in the contingent towns.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the embarrassing part. And we've had firefighters who have gone in and have been burned, if you will, by the fact that they're seeking help. But then the word starts and so forth. It's embarrassing. This is somebody who would be able to provide that support
Right.
in confidence.
So prior to you saying this should be shared with the police department, I was looking at this thinking, okay, I can see the need, but it seems like a lot for a full-time position. Would it make sense to pair up with another town and have one social worker covering? I'm just going to use North Branford because they're next to us, right?
Yeah, so it's something that we could certainly consider, but I will say this: I think if we were to sit down with the police department, perhaps offline,
Yeah.
And I'm only saying offline because we'd have to start talking about some specific cases. I don't think that's worthy of being shared on media.
Mhm.
I think you'd be surprised at the number of individuals in town that would benefit from this. I think that we're well beyond that.
All right, and because we're at the Board of Finance, there's no offsetting revenue associated with this, and there's no offsetting decrease in expenses associated with this, just to be clear.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's a comparable salary
Yeah.
compared to other towns.
All right.
I did do some research there, but no other.
And Rich, would that include the benefits or not, would you say?
No.
I would assume that to be direct wages only, which means no payroll taxes, no insurance, no benefits, no vacation, no other personal time.
Correct. That's not factored in.
So that's just raw. I assume it's a raw cost, $80,000 per person.
So that's salary only,
That's
right?
just,
And,
So you could almost, probably add another 60,000 to that
okay,
if they were a town employee.
Chief, is BH Care an option?
I don't want to speak for them. It's not currently in their scope, and it's not anything that their providers can currently provide.
Right. And do you
I
have
think I don't mean to cut you short, but
No,
I think
no.
the important part as well is that might satisfy the community piece, but it's not going to satisfy the personnel piece, right? Because BH Care's house on Lindsay Street. Now, could we alter the contract perhaps and bring this under the umbrella of BH Care? That's an opportunity, but I think the important part here is that they are working split between the police department and the fire department and nowhere else. That's the only way that a relationship is going to form.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if we need to split this into two different kinds of roles. But certainly I can see that this would have value. Would you have a space for someone to actually be the face that everyone recognizes in the department when they come in?
We'd find a space, yeah.
You'd find a space.
We'd find a space.
Okay.
We're not talking about a lot of room, so yeah.
No, right. But you want it to be a private space, that people can.
Yeah, I mean,
have
of course, yep.
some privacy.
want to move on, Paul, thank you.
Moving on to what's changed during 2025. I want to start to talk about what's happening here in town. And so one of the things that impacted us at the close of 2024, and certainly all throughout 2025, is that we've had to adjust the incidents that we're dispatching the volunteers to. That came directly from them. They've asked to be reduced in the number of calls they're responding to. And so what did that do? That shifted more calls onto career apparatus. And so I'll give you an example. We used to be able to dispatch one volunteer engine or one career engine to some incidents. Now we have to dispatch both career engines to that same incident and to try to keep the volunteers, in service. So that started, and then the other thing that started to happen is about this time last year, about September of 2024, I should say, we were having an issue where we were dispatching volunteer apparatus and they weren't responding. So we spent time in this workshop before talking about the response times of volunteers. But what started to happen was that started to become the norm, that they weren't responding. And I personally have an issue with dispatching an apparatus with the expectation it's going to respond and then not showing up, not going at all. Makes it really hard for us to build any kind of operational continuity in our department if we're dispatching apparatus and they're not responding. And so we had a conversation with the volunteer leadership at the time, and they acknowledged it, and they're just as embarrassed about it. They're doing the absolute best they can with the minimal amount of volunteers that they have. And so they agreed at that time, and we talked about this briefly last year, but it had only been in place for a few months, coming out of service during the week. And so one company is out of service every day at 7 a.m., goes back in service at 3 p.m. Another company, I'm calling them companies, another station is out of service at 7 a.m., tries to go back in service at 5 p.m. So you have two stations that are closed. They are not providing any volunteers at all. We're not able to even dispatch those apparatus. What started to happen is that's expanding right now into some evenings. We rely on them to let us know when they have a crew assembled, and a crew of 2. That's what we're talking about right now. 2 volunteers can put an engine in service. So we're not talking a lot. I mean, it's not that many to begin with, unfortunately. But these women and men are doing the best they can to try to go back in service on those hours. But unfortunately, at times, it's creeping into the evenings and nights and weekends. When this occurs, we're losing 3 engines in a truck from our fleet of being able to dispatch to incidents. 2 engines are at West Ridge, up on the west side of town on Ridge Road, an engine and an aerial truck as soon as it comes back in service is out of Northeast across from Big Y. And so we lose the ability to dispatch those apparatus. What happens is we've cut our number of total apparatus in half. So instead of having all these apparatus to dispatch of simultaneous incidents, to back us up on calls, to cover us when we are tied up at scenes, they're not even available to us. And so what's happened is we've had to start to, as we've talked about in the past, have no fire units able to respond or have not enough fire units be able to cover the calls. I'll give you another example, highway calls. We talk a lot about highway incidents, and as you travel, around the state, you see fire apparatus staged ahead of the accident, blocking the scene to make it safe for firefighters. We lose that ability because we're taking out 4 apparatus from our town to be able to respond. So what happens is we have to dispatch, in some cases, 2 or 3 of our career apparatus. We only have 4 in service, right? 2 engines, a truck, and a rescue is all you have in town for paid career apparatus. We're sending 3/4 of our paid fleet to the highway to cover just 1 call on the highway. So it's making it hard to be able to plan for covering those other incidents that are coming in. And what we know about the highway, as you know, sitting in traffic sometimes, we're not there in 5 minutes. We're there sometimes for 30, 40 plus minutes. So it's a very long period of time. And so what would happen is, this is always where the volunteer department would come in, the volunteer firefighters would come in. They would be able to cover those incidents while we were tied up and on a call. And without them in service, that's not an option right now. And so I want to be real about this. This is what you're looking at right now in 2 stations. They are closed. There is nobody going to the station. Those apparatus are out of service every single weekday. Unfortunately, I do feel like this is going to continue to get worse, and it is something that we're going to need to start to think about how we're going to address it. Our stations are strategically located and put throughout town for a reason, to be able to cover calls. Now, I've spent time before talking about time distance travel. I've talked about how fast fire grows inside of a minute. If you want to learn about that, go back and watch any of the last 10 workshops I've done. So I'm not going to cover that today. I'm getting right down to it, and this is what you're looking at right now. Every day right now, Monday through Friday, those are the 4 apparatus you see on the right side of your screen. But at one time on the left side of your screen, that's the coverage that we had with the stations that we have and the apparatus. The yellow are the volunteer apparatus, that they are dedicated and they do the best they can, both stations, to respond. The green is what Montewies once was, but unfortunately Montewies closed. And so you've lost 2 stations during a day. GIS maps that I can share with you if you're ever interested go as far as showing exactly the time, distance, and travel specific to those fire stations. And so if you think back to when we were trying to open Montewies, it's a 12, 13-minute drive down to the south end of town. It's just as long of a drive at our parts of town as well. And so we're looking at significant response times to some areas of our community. Now, it wasn't always this way. Like I need the board to recognize that. I've been with this department now for my 25th year. Not that long ago, we were being dispatched we've always been dispatched to the same incidents as the volunteers. And the volunteers responding from headquarters, the volunteers would lead us to wherever we were going. I remember because there were practically shouting matches at times, because as the engine was coming or the truck was coming from headquarters, pulling up to a volunteer station, a volunteer apparatus would pull out in front of us. We laugh about it now. I wish those days were back. But that's because those volunteers, there were so many of them, they were responding from their house, they were able to facilitate a response quickly and start en route. And so what you see right now is not anything that we've experienced before. We're in kind of new territory here. And so as we start to look at less and less volunteers, this is becoming our reality. The GIS map on the right side covers our incident responses. In 2025, 4,578 incidents, 6,314 responses. Now, what is that? Why is that disparity? So responses are individual apparatus responding. So if I were to say 4,578 alarms, that would indicate one engine or one apparatus to respond for each alarm, and that's not the case. Some alarms, as we just talked about, take 2, 3, sometimes more apparatus to respond. And so in this case, we're looking at 6,314 apparatus responses. Comes out to about 17 unit responses a day. We are not a 75% EMS-driven department. We sit at about 66%. And why is that? Well, because we'll go back to when we worked to obtain the PSA in town. One of the things that are required for the PSA is that we maintain constant radio communication with Nelson Ambulance, now Yale, Y-Access. So in doing so, we were able to carve out some of the non-emergent incidents, medical incidents that occur in town, and dispatch just an ambulance, which you've heard me talk about in the past. That's about 1,278 incidents a year. So now if you add those back in, yeah, we'd be at a 75% EMS-driven department like most towns around us are, but we're not that. And the reason for this, because our Nelson ambulances have direct radio communication with our dispatch center. So we meet our obligation of a 911 response because the ambulance is signing on with our dispatch and arriving with our dispatch. And we meet our statutory authority and obligation by doing that. And again, that's for non-emergent calls, where we think that 2 people from an ambulance can adequately handle that incident. We know that's not always the case, and we know that some incidents you want to make sure that you have a response right away. It's worth talking about the fact that Nelson Ambulance was recently bought out by Y-Access. The contract that we had agreed to 2 years ago allowed for that transfer of ownership, and the contract is up, I believe, in November of this year, and we're going to be watching closely to make sure that we maintain the same services that we've experienced with Nelson Ambulance carries through into Y-Access.
So
Yeah.
Chief, the number at the very top, that 4578 alarms, that does not include the 1278?
It does not.
It does not. Okay, so if you folded, as you said, if you folded those two numbers in together, the overall profile of demand by this community for emergency response would have, what did you say, somewhere in the 75% range of medical calls.
Correct.
But that isn't the demand on the department because of either Nelson or Yale, correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for clarifying.
The other piece that's up there is 224 highway incidents. We talked about the highway and how demanding they are to the town, and our response is quite heavy on our apparatus. And 46% of the time, there is more than one incident occurring. And so what does that mean? That means, again, go back to those same 4 career apparatus that we talked about. One of those 4, or sometimes multiple of those 4, are not available. So it's quite often, half the time practically, that we're answering more than one incident at a time.
And Paul, just so I understand, so of the 4,578 alarms, I'm rounding, but a third are fire related, so that's roughly 1,500, right?
Yes.
You said earlier we have 20 plus or minus structure fires a year, so what's the difference? Someone's got a small fire in their backyard from a turkey fryer, or what is that?
Sure. I mean, it could be car fires that we're not investigating, right? I mean, so I say 20 fires, I'm talking about 20 fires that have damage that exceeds $5,000. And
Right.
It's not always car, because quite honestly, there's not a big investigation with car fires unless it's suspicious. So those 20 fires we talked about are fires within structures that have more than $5,000 in damage.
Be it a car or a house?
Yeah.
And the rest are small fires that are, someone has their stove is on, they have a small fire in their stove and you put it out, right?
Yeah, if there's not a huge dollar number, if
Yeah,
it's just smoke in the apartment or in the
Right.
building, right.
Okay.
The heat map is accurate. I ran that for all of 2025, so you can see that we don't have necessarily one area that's heavy with calls. It's pretty evenly spread throughout the town. Again, I want to spend some time talking about recruitment and retainment of volunteer firefighters. I do this every year, but unfortunately this is continuing to change. So as we sit here today, we have 7 dedicated and active certified firefighters in West Ridge and 7 dedicated and active firefighters in Northeast. One number that we constantly watch are the number that are on probationary status, and what that is are individuals who are interested in becoming a volunteer and going through the training. Again, recognize that might take anywhere from a year to 18 months in some cases. So we're watching that we have 2 in West Ridge and 4 in Northeast. So at present day, we have 17 volunteers in total, 13 of which are qualified. And at one time we had over 105. Going back again to when I talked about, 15, 20 years ago. There was waiting lists to get on these stations. Unfortunately, now there's not. So we're looking at 17 in total.
Does it make a difference to you where there's staff? Meaning, is it better to have half of them roughly in Ridge Road and Northeast versus having all of them be out of Ridge?
So it's something worth talking about, but the issue then is that response time factor.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So we allow the volunteers to assemble a response within 15 minutes. That's how long we give them. From the time of incident that comes in, they're dispatched the same time that we are. They have 15 minutes to get on the air. And so the issue is that's a long time, 15 minutes, unfortunately. It really is. And so what I don't want to see happen is that we now make them further away from the incident they're responding to.
Right.
It is set up right now where the stations that are closest to the scene are the ones that are dispatched.
Right.
We continue to work with the Explorer program. We have some of our volunteers are dedicated and working with high school students to try to get their interest into volunteer firefighting, and we continue with recruitment campaigns, and I'm heavily involved with the state in trying to get more volunteers. This is not a problem just in North Haven. This is a problem everywhere. I hope that you recognize that this is not something that North Haven is doing or that we can do to stem this. It's a statewide, in some ways, nationwide issue. In terms of our staffing, again, going back to when we were able to dispatch all those apparatus, we would assemble 43 plus firefighters in 10 minutes. Now, present day, we're assembling 10. So it's very, very hard, because what happens is when I arrive on scene, when a deputy chief arrives on scene, or even the shift commanders that are running the scene until we arrive, we know that there's 20 tasks that have to get done. Every textbook tells you that. Every scenario, drives that, what needs to get done. How do you pick just the 4 things that you can get done? And it changes on incident. It's not like we can write a policy and say, well, just do these 4 things all the time. It changes every single incident. And so this is the trouble that we're running into, is that we don't have enough firefighters. We wear more air on our backs than any other town around us, because I'm trying to give ourselves enough air to breathe to be able to get the job done. But that's taxing on the firefighters. When they come out from a fire and they're out of air in the tank that they have on their back, and they're saying, I need relief, and I got nobody there yet. There's nobody there. I can call mutual aid, they still won't be there necessarily.
Right.
When you look at the staffing trend, and I'm going to cover more of this in a minute, you can see we haven't gone up that much in the number of firefighters on shift. Over a 30-year time, we've only increased the minimum number of firefighters on shift by 3. We've gone from 7 to 10. So how does it impact daily operations? Again, the number of overlapping incidents are increasing. We have far too much reliance right now on volunteer firefighters. I'm going to be honest with you, it's actually becoming taxing on them. Unfortunately, as much as logistically it makes sense and operationally it makes sense to make sure that they're in service, right? So they have apps that we provide them on their phone, and they're checking in with each other every day at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock to see who's around, to see if they can put the engine in service. That's becoming taxing on them, because what it is, it's a commitment, right? So volunteer firefighters, let's be honest about this, they have the ability to say, I can't go to that call. But we don't give them that ability in this town. We have to make sure that at 3 or 5 o'clock that they've checked in with each other and they're in touch with their volunteer leadership, and they're saying, yes, anything that comes in right now, I will respond to. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen, unfortunately, that have a negative impact on the volunteers, because now they have to make that commitment. So no matter what they're doing that night with their kids, with their wife, with their parents, whatever it is, they have to be able to go. So 24 to 30% of the time right now, they are out of service. In terms of personnel increase, you'll see in your handout, in your budget rather, that I've asked for the 4 firefighters. I want to be clear about something. This isn't the fire chief asking for staffing again. This is the fire chief asking for the same staffing he's been asking for almost a decade. 2018-19, we asked for 16 firefighters. We were approved 2. At that time, we had 51 volunteers. And you can see the trend. Our shift staffing at that time was 8. We started to go with the 2 firefighters every year. So our shift staffing in 1920, some shifts, 1 shift was 10, 3 shifts were 8. You can see why that 8 to 10 is listed there. I asked for 8 firefighters the next year, we provided 2. But pay attention to that right side, the number of volunteers. That's continued to decline. So every year that I'm here asking for firefighters, I'm doing so because you pay me to be your fire chief. You pay me to look into the future and forecast what's going to happen in this town. And I can tell you with certainty, those numbers aren't going to change. Unfortunately, I wish that they would, but they're not going to. And so up until that red line, we were hiring 2 firefighters every year. But after that red line, I just don't know what happened. There's no longer any firefighters approved. In that year, we asked for a SAFER grant from the federal government. I attempted to increase the staffing to 17. Sounds like a lot, but it was 17 with a 14 minimum. So that you have some opportunity in there to be able to not have the demand on overtime. Because the overtime in the firefighters is taxing. Right now I'm asking firefighters to work 3-4 shifts. That's 2 days, 2 straight days. So when you start to increase the number of firefighters on your shift, when you have a minimum in there, so your max is not your minimum, you start to be able to create a better work environment. But after that red line is when I just don't know what happened. We asked for staffing, we haven't been approved. That 23-24, the reason it's asterisk is because I did not ask for staffing because the town supported the SAFER grant. And so that's why there was no request that year. We were waiting to see what happened to SAFER grant. In this past year, I sought the opportunity to apply for a SAFER grant again, and I was told that we can't right now. It has to go through the Board of Finance. And so I can't put in for a grant like I used to anymore. And after that red line, I'm just trying to understand from the board, why the requests aren't being fulfilled. What happened? Because I got to tell you, 3 years ago, we lost a firefighter in a fire on Quinnipiac Avenue. Nobody's asked a question about what could have been different. Chief, what do you need? We closed on a volunteer station right after that fire. They closed themselves. I didn't close them. They closed themselves. Why? Because they had gone to that fire and they realized how real it was and they didn't want to continue to do it. There's a NIOSH report right now out on that fire, a federal report. Has anybody from the board read that? It was released within the last 4 months. In that report, there's some pretty significant findings that you should be looking at, especially the Board of Finance.
Can you
To
provide
be
us
fair,
with?
to be fair, Paul, sorry, Nancy, I'll let you go in a second. I wouldn't even know about that, and truthfully, it's been discussed many times that you run the departments, we manage some money, and we allocate money. So and you've been persistent and persuasive over the years in your presentations, and your presentation's one of the best we get, along with Sue, who was also here this morning, right? So, as far as that question goes, my answer is certainly no, and probably the same for the other board members, right?
So
But
I'd ask you to read that report.
Look, I understand your point. You've made this point numerous times. I don't have an exact answer for you. I'm below the red line. Obviously, staffing going way back, right? Increased by 10 individuals you've got on the board there, right? I think the obvious answer is that we have to weigh the priorities of all the departments, right, across the board. And you've got a situation that you've let this board know about for a long time in terms of the volunteers going down, not enough increase in the full-time staff, and in a lot of cases, your incidents are increasing across the board. So that's something that we have to measure. That's the answer, really.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to it's either unwilling or unable, and I truly think it's unwilling because you've been able to put in staffing increases in other departments, but not the fire department. And I guess I'm just trying. And I said this last year as we were closing. What do you need to see from me? What do you need to hear from me in order to support that request? Because I was fine with the 2 firefighters every year. It was at least something that we could plan for operationally. It was something that we could start to build our recruitment around. It was something that we knew that was almost a guarantee. And then it stopped. Like we have 2 shifts with 11, 2 shifts with 10. And that doesn't make sense.
Outside the Board of Ed, I would say that we haven't had that many hires across the town in general. We hired a couple police officers, as you probably are aware, in the last year or two. And look, the reality is, and Sue said it earlier, we've had essentially a $2 million increase here the last 2 years in town, for different reasons, right? So that's just something, again, that we have to measure. We have to measure your needs and needs of the community against the entire town.
I recognize the task you have before you. Living in town, I see the tax increases firsthand myself.
I just paid my bill, it was painful.
Yep. So I need the board to recognize the importance of this.
I think we do, that's for sure. And Nancy, I didn't interrupt you.
No, you made the point.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's important to know that this is the only time we interact with one another.
It's very important.
I don't have a conversation with anybody from the Board of Finance, unfortunately, from the last workshop to this workshop practically. So the one opportunity I get is now.
Sure.
And I hope that can change.
Yeah.
Because I need the board to realize that this is important to me and all the firefighters that are here.
Can we get a copy of this presentation?
Of course.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
But I just want to go over the numbers. I basically have the same questions I had earlier on the social worker. So the 506 is the raw cost, if you will, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so Rich already answered the benefit side of it.
Probably more like 656 without equipment.
That was my other question. So the turnout gear or whatever else would be required for 4 firefighters is not in the capital plan, right?
No, so we built in, a number of years ago in the equipment line, we built in to be able to purchase, I don't know, whatever it was, 7 to 8 sets of gear every
Yeah.
year. We would just make sure that gear ends up to the new firefighters essentially.
Okay.
Training wise, we can absorb it in the budget,
Right.
we can make some changes on our training that we do for the staff and cover the recruitment.
Members?
I can appreciate what you're asking for, and I haven't been on this board that long, and you've asked for the same stuff every single time. But I do take offense in the sense, the fact that how would we know that information that you just asked us to note that we should have known?
Which
How would
information?
we have known that?
Which information?
Well, you said we should have seen a report that was
Sure.
out.
Yeah.
We don't have access to that.
Sure.
So
I'll make
you
sure
could
have it.
start sharing some of that, or let us know how we can access it.
Sure.
I mean, it makes us feel like you're not appreciating all the hard work we're trying to do, because as Tim said, it's a tough budget year for everybody. I respect that you've got so many people here today. I think that's terrific.
Well, it says a lot about how we feel right now.
Well, absolutely, and we all can appreciate that.
Sure. It's publicly available. I talked about the MASH report for a couple of years about how it was coming. It's out there now, and what I would say is, if you're inclined to read it, I would read it 2 ways. I'd read it, one, at face value for what it says, and I would ask another firefighter to read it, and if you will, read between the lines, so that you get an idea for what some of our shortcomings are.
Can you repeat that again for what the report is and where we can find it?
Sure. So it is a NIOSH report, and it's publicly available right on the website. You can look up line of duty death reports.
Could you just spell NIOSH for LJ, please?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Could you just spell NIOSH for LJ, please?
NIOSH.
Thank you.
So Paul,
go ahead.
I had just some context for all of this. I did a little bit of research, and I think you were part of the department when there was a 7 firefighter minimum, right? So that was the case from 74 all the way through 2009. And then in 2009, we started the paramedic program. And in 2012, the Fire Commission increased the minimum up to 8 firefighters. So for a total of times 4 shifts, so just 32 total. You became chief in 2015. And in 2019, you increased the minimum number of firefighters per shift from 8 up to 10. And from 23 to 25, you have a minimum of 11 firefighters on just 2 shifts. The other 2 are 10 minimum, right?
Those shifts are still 10 minimum. 11 with 10 minimum.
I see.
And you're right, except for the 8 firefighters. It was the same thing up until about 2016.
16.
It was 8 firefighters, minimum 7. In 2016, following a fire on Green Hill Road, is when that went to 8 firefighters minimum. and that is at the direction of the fire commission at that time.
Okay. So you were already chief when
Yes.
that happened. Got it. So the increase from 7 to 8 firefighters on all shifts is a 14% increase. The increase from 8 firefighter minimum to 10 is a 25% increase. The increase from 10 firefighters on 4 shifts to 10 firefighters on 2 shifts and 11 firefighters on 2 shifts is a 5% increase. And your proposed increase currently is going from 42 firefighters total, that's captain, lieutenant, and career firefighters, up to 46 is about a 9.5% increase. Now, if we go from where we are now to what you're proposing as the minimum, which is 14 firefighters per shift, that would be a 33% increase. And if we go up to your maximum, which is 17 firefighters per shift, that would be a 62% increase.
Sure.
So again, going back to the original part of your story in which you were asking for 16 firefighters, that was like a 50% increase, all in one lump sum. So this would also be a pretty substantial increase if we were to go up to either the 14 or the 17% increase. So I guess the question is, where is the data that shows that we need to get to those particular kinds of numbers?
The right side of your screen where it shows a decline in the volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you don't see ever in your financial reports
Mhm.
were the services the volunteers provided. I
Mm.
wish I could have shown that as a savings to you for all those years, because
Right.
that's what it provided. Didn't
No
show
question,
a cost.
no
right?
question. There was a
So
tremendous
what you have to do when you run all those numbers, what you just did, is look at that same decline in volunteers. And then look at how many firefighters are on scene. We've been over this year after year.
Right.
How many firefighters we need on scene versus how many we provide on scene.
Right.
I've got a firefighter right now, when we think it's just fires, I got a firefighter who's probably gonna have to go out retired on a medical injury,
Right.
on a medical call from a code, cardiac arrest. That wasn't a fire call.
Mhm.
He's only got 14 years in a job and he's gonna have to retire because he got himself hurt permanently on a medical call. So it's not just fire calls we have to increase staffing at. There's a lot of calls we should be increasing staffing at. So the data is that. The data is showing that we should be having more firefighters on scene than we are, and that the number of volunteers that we relied on so heavily for so many years has declined.
And from the numbers that you showed for 2025 anyway, it looks like about 3,000 calls were for medical and another 1,200 medical calls were answered by Nelson. So that's a total of about 4,300 calls that are just medical calls. And I don't mean to trivialize that
Sure.
in any way, but it does represent the demand, as I mentioned before, for this town. So just thinking outside the box, just for a moment, and not trying to tell you how to do your job, but just making a suggestion. Is there a possibility to use the ambulance that you're requesting this year, have it stationed wherever, maybe at Monowese, fully utilizing that facility, having one engine and one ambulance, and having that ambulance then staffed with 2 firefighters, 1 paramedic and 1 EMS, to be functioning in order to address that particular demand that is posed by our town.
So we're meeting the demand right now in terms of the medicals. And we're doing it by not only providing the medical service, but the simultaneous fire service as well. And I believe you've advocated for years about putting a rescue at Monowese instead of a fire engine. But we can show case after case where because we respond with a fire engine to a fire, we're able to make a significant impact on scene and quite honestly make it safer for the citizens and for our firefighters. And so staffing rescues is not optimum for us at all. You can look at the medical calls and say, well, you should be staffing more medical incidents, but what about the 2,000 fires? Those are real. You can't expect the 1 engine or the 2 engines you're going to have left in town to cover all of those. Like I said, it's not. We're trying to recreate something that works perfectly well in other towns. So why would we try to do something different? Other towns are running paramedic-based engines, which is exactly what we're trying to get to. They're not running just rescues.
But if you combine not even percentages, the absolute numbers of fire responses and MVAs requiring the big trucks, that's still only 1,500, and that's half of the medical calls.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
So just proportionally is the only argument that I'm making.
Sure.
So.
Any other members have any questions on this particular item? There's really just the assessment study left, I think.
Yeah, just the assessment study. It's worth noting that the last time that we had a study done was 1972. We have a mandate from the state of Connecticut that wasn't based on a study, but based on similar data from 1996. There's been no other study performed of the needs of the department, and so I'm advocating for that study to occur. And we can look at things like what Mrs. Barrett is referencing in that study, perhaps. Let somebody come in who is a professional and hear it from somebody perhaps other than me. I neglected to have a slide, Mr. Chairman, on the extrication equipment. I recognize that that's something that has not been discussed. Just know this with our extrication equipment. We have about 3 sets of extrication equipment throughout town. We need to, because we never know exactly which apparatus is going to be able to respond. They have a shelf life in terms of operations, and they have a shelf life in terms of effectiveness. So the cars continue to become better and better and stronger and stronger. And so what happens, unfortunately, is after a number of years, the equipment that we have to cut into cars is no longer effective. And
Did we
so
find a new set last year? No?
don't believe so. It's been a couple
Rich
of years.
says yes, you say no.
Yeah, it came out of
Yes, we did.
volunteer money.
Volunteer money? Yeah, so
Yeah.
not through capital. Yeah.
For the,
Okay.
the 500 they get, the volunteers get $500 when they respond on the
Yeah.
highway, and that money was used for equipment, and it was bought for the volunteer house at that time.
Okay, so I'm sorry, did you say you have 3 sets, Paul?
We run about 3 sets.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 complete sets. So when I talk about the future, and I'm wrapping up now, I continue to see the demand on services here in town. Particularly, if we were going to say right now that we're not going to build anymore, we're going to keep the town just as it is, start to plan for that. But I know that's not the case, and we all know that's not the case. There's additional planning economically that we're in the plans, in the works right now. I'm providing comments to the Planning and Zoning Board right now, referencing the fact that some of these projects are going to place a greater demand on emergency services, and asking the Zoning Board to consider that. There was a meeting recently with the town attorney in which that was questioned, and it was validated that those considerations should be taken into account by the Zoning Board.
I apologize, could you make that point again, Paul, on the town attorney zoning board, please?
Sure. So I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. So every month I get the zoning board agenda. I'm asked for myself and the police chief and probably a couple others. We're asked to provide comments on projects.
Okay.
What I'm doing is I'm taking projects that I know are going to be drivers for incidents. So what are those? Apartment buildings, let's say, medical facilities, things like that I know are going to be drivers for calls that are going to continue to draw on the demand of fire services. I'm referencing that the zoning board should be aware of that.
I got it. We have a bunch of new apartment buildings, as we all know. And our apparatus can reach the upper levels of those?
The tower that we have can,
Yeah.
and it's worth noting, sir, that the quint that we just ordered, I'm going to call it a quint, right? So what is a quint? So a quint is something that can be an engine and a truck. So when you hear me say quint, I apologize. It's nomenclature that we use. So engines carry water, trucks carry ladders, a quint carries both. But the thing to know with the quint that's coming in right now, it's a smaller ladder. So it's meant more for residential applications, but it won't fit all of our buildings. It won't reach all of our buildings, no. I think it's important that we define community expectations so that we can increase awareness. We are going to try to keep the volunteer firefighter status where it is. We continue to work with them and meet with their leadership. It's worth noting that we are not able necessarily to respond to all incidents, and that's because if there's no units available, then we've got to be able to either call mutual aid, and we're calling mutual aid for building fires. That's what we're calling mutual aid for. We're not going to call mutual aid for an accident, for a car fire, for a brush fire. Those towns around us have said, hey, we can't go and cover your calls. We'll come if you need help, but we can't cover your calls for you. No different than we're not covering their calls. And then we need to continue to monitor the number of firefighter paramedics. It is worth noting that we are continuing to see a decline in the number of paramedics that we have applying to the department. We rely heavily on paramedics in the department, and unfortunately, that is becoming harder and harder to achieve. And in large part, that's because our labor contract is not strong enough to attract the paramedics that we need. In terms of 5-year capital, it's the same thing that's on your page. Nothing should have changed. I've referenced the apparatus that we've talked about, and you can see what we forecasted out. Not a lot there, I believe, that I need to explain. There's a gear extractor in there so that you understand what a gear PPE, personal protective equipment gear extractor is we can't put our firefighter structural firefighting gear in the regular wash. Can't happen. Not only is it not effective, but it won't, it's not allowed even legally. And so there's extractors that we need to purchase. Right now we have one really good set and we have a small set at another station, but there's more and more emphasis right now on health and safety in the fire departments. And after every structure fire and even some other fires, we should be washing our gear. We have one really good set right now, and if it ever were to break, we're kind of in trouble. So we've got to start planning on the replacement of that. Everything else in there, I believe, is pretty self-explanatory. Life Pack 15 is what the paramedics use for a variety of reasons. It's basically your AED as you would know it.
Thank you, Paul. Members, any final questions for the chief or the assistant chief? No?
Hold on just a second. I think you skipped over the part in your presentation about trying to carve out the captains from the engines.
Sure. So we had discussed that the other day, Nancy. So
Yes.
just know that if we are ever successful in increasing the staffing to that 14 number, that would include taking what I'm going to call the shift commander, has the rank of captain, and putting them into a separate vehicle so they can respond independently to the scenes that he or she needs to be at. That would involve promotion of a lieutenant to be able to backfill that position in the engine. But yes, that is a, if you will, it's a long term. It shouldn't be long term, but it is long term, unfortunately. But that is effective because what that allows that shift commander is who's running that scene until a deputy chief or myself gets there, and that could take some time, right? We have, we're not on call 24/7 within 5 minutes of town. So that shift commander is the one who's responding to the scenes and can start to call for help or minimize the incident that's happening, the response that's occurring. And so yes, that is one of the things that are kind of being targeted right now.
So on the engine that has the captain from headquarters, there isn't a lieutenant currently?
No.
So it's a captain and 2 firefighters.
Yes.
And are any of the 4 captains currently paramedics?
Yes.
How many?
3 are technically licensed, but they don't operate as paramedics.
Right, I'm just trying to get a sense for if they operate alone and they show up at a medical call, as you say, in order to assess, is this really an emergency?
Sure.
And how to, allocate resources appropriately.
Yeah, that's fair. They can do that.
They're just by themselves though.
They have handcuffs, but they can do it. They still don't have the equipment necessary, but to a certain extent, yes, they're trained.
So they would also need an additional vehicle, right? And as you say, additional personnel in order to backfill that position. Okay. And if there is a major, fire incident, as you say, you and potentially one or both deputy chiefs also show up on scene, correct?
Yes.
So in terms of like incident command, you have both yourselves as the chiefs as well as the captain kind of running the overall scene. Is that right? Just help me to understand.
Yep, so it's worth noting that one of us is on call at all times and has an obligation to respond.
Sure.
Obviously, the 3 of us don't all necessarily live right in town or nearby, so there's a 30-minute response sometimes for one of us to arrive on scene.
I see.
And in that period of time, the captain is not only trying to manage the scene, but is trying to manage the engine as well, because there's only 3 I'm calling them a firefighter because they're going to function as a firefighter now as well. There's only 3 individuals assigned to the engine, so they are multitasking, trying to operate the engine, pull hoses and so forth, and trying to manage the fire scene, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And just one other thing in terms of the capital requests, I just want to make it very clear that this is the first time I'm hearing that the two vehicles that were ordered 2 years ago, one was an engine and one was a ladder truck, and the ladder truck we're going to take possession of in a month. The engine, would have been ready in another year. This is the first that I'm hearing that has been canceled. So it looks as though that will not be in this year's or next year's. Is that right? Capital budget?
Yeah.
So it should not be in the column of 27-28. Is that right?
It's in the 5-year column.
Yeah, I understand. In the 5-year plan, should it be in 27-28, starting in 27-28,
So
or
the-
remains to be seen?
So you were the one that questioned in the beginning.
Right.
Let me just review this with you, okay?
Sure.
So we got the first truck authorized.
Yes.
In this truck, Paul put it in the 5-year capital plan, so he can take that and put it in next year's budget to plan for that second truck. We don't have the money appropriated now to put that truck in.
Okay. Because I thought it was supposed to be ready in a year. That's why I'm asking the question.
It's ready in 2027.
Yeah, that's a year.
So,
So-
2000, August of 2027,
So
a
it,
year and a half.
so,
Do you understand this whole thing now? Do you understand?
well, again, we're planning for the budget for 26-27, and then the next year after that is 27-28. So is the 2027, which budget are you talking about?
I just explained it. It's in the 5-year plan, it's in the capital plan and a 5-year plan. Paul's planning to move that expenditure into next year's workshop session.
Okay, so it's
Without
it's not
doing that,
budgeted.
we have no money to appropriate it.
Right.
The very question you brought up a couple months ago.
Right. Well, we didn't have the money appropriated until November for the ladder truck either. So that's why I'm asking the question. So it's in the 5-year plan, which means it's not budgeted. It's just potentially.
Well, nothing in the 5-year plan's budget beyond the next
Nothing in
year.
the 5-year
Exactly.
plan.
So that's what
Frankly,
I'm saying.
It's in the 5-year plan to be budgeted.
Right.
That's the way it works.
Chief Janiszewski, Assistant Chief Naples, we appreciate.
Sure.
Go ahead, sorry.
If you don't mind, Chairman, and again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I understand that your job is extremely difficult. You have department heads that are coming in front of you that are asking for a lot as prices increase, as the needs increase. This is a phenomenal presentation that the chief has put together. I've had the opportunity to listen to a very similar presentation that he did last year in front of you all here. The fire department is truly the safety net of the community. I've been here for 9 months. I've had the opportunity to work underneath the chief's leadership along with Chief Bisson and a phenomenal group of firefighters, men and women here that I have seen working just closely next door in the town of Hamden. I've seen these firefighters struggle and suffer mentally, physically, and give every bit of their heart to these community members, to the lives here in this town. With 3 losses, it's taken a big toll on them, both mentally and physically. There's responsibilities that we have to uphold, and each of them do that with the pride and the dedication that we all expect. But they're tired. They want to see some support. I understand a lot of this comes with a financial impact on the town and on the taxpayers. But the taxpayers also, they have expectations. We need to not only meet those expectations, but we want to exceed them. So all I can ask for you is please consider the presentation the chief gave you today. Consider these firefighters that are going out and responding to our community members on their worst day, and to also be able to give them the support that they need. So thank you again.
Thank you, Assistant Chief
Thank you.
Naples. Again, thank you, Chief Janiszewski. Thank you, the board members are here. The roughly dozen or so career members are in the back. We have at least one volunteer firefighter here as well. One of the 13 or 14, I guess, right? And yes, we'll obviously take that into account. So appreciate it. And with that, we'll close the workshop for the day.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.